Hello, hello. Welcome back to day 2 of the ActionACT 5-day challenge. I hope you got something out of yesterday in learning the why about taking the ACT. And today we're going to focus on the what is the ACT. If you haven't already, go ahead and download the worksheet so that you could take notes as we're going through and talking about what is actually going to be on the ACT. All right, so what is covered on the ACT? There are 5 sections on the ACT: English, math, reading, science, and then an optional essay. And I will talk more about all those now. Let's dive right into the details. So the first section is English. And this is where, if you want to take some notes on the worksheet, you have 75 questions total, and you have 45 minutes. Okay, the way it's broken down is you have 5 passages, each with about 15 questions. And timing-wise, if you have 5 passages and 45 minutes, that gives you about 9 minutes per passage. And just because I'm visual, I want to show you this is what the English section looks like. So you have, I'm sure you've seen it before, you have your passage here on the left and the questions that go on the right. Now, when you look at how the questions break down, you're going to have 38 to 42. So the majority of the questions are going to be on convention or grammar. Or 22 to 24 are going to be production of writing questions. So those are going to be more about the story. And then 10 to 14 questions on the knowledge of writing. Okay, so even though it has writing stuff all over the place, it really is just grammar. Kind of as a rule of thumb, I think about it as 60% of the questions are about grammar and 40% of the questions are about the story. Next section is math. On math, you have 60 questions total, and you have 60 minutes. So that gives you 1 minute per question. I hope that wasn't too difficult of a math question. So math looks like this, and this is, I'm going to tell you later this week where to get this practice test for free. And to make it smaller, usually you have the problems on the left and you have space to work on the right. To condense it down for printing, they filled both columns, so you don't have as much room to work out your problems, but it doesn't take as much to print. So that's math. Basically, you have about half of the questions on the test are pre-algebra or algebra or plane geometry. So and plane geometry is like what's the area of a circle or area of a triangle type of questions. You're going to have 7 to 9 questions that are on function. You're going to have a couple statistics and probability questions. And then these 24 to 26 integrating essential skills questions is where a lot of the pre-algebra and the coordinate geometry, so the slope, that kind of stuff, all falls under the integrating essential skills. The highest math content you'll see on the test is you'll have 1 or 2 pre-calc questions, and you'll have 4 trig questions. So for the 4 trig questions, 2 you could solve with SOHCAHTOA, and 2 are going to be a little bit harder. But when I talk about scoring for the math section, if you aren't comfortable with the higher level math, don't worry. You could still score really high even if you're really struggling with the last 10 problems or so. All right, the next section is reading. Reading, you have 40 questions total in 35 minutes. It's broken into 4 passages. These 4 passages always appear in the same order. So first you have prose fiction, then social science, then humanities, and ends with natural science. If you're going to complete all 4 passages, you need to take about 8 to 9 minutes per passage. That is not a lot of time, because in that 8 to 9 minutes, you need to read a full passage. So here's an example of the passage, and then answer 10 questions that goes along with it. So that is not a lot of time. You have to really be moving. On Friday, I'll talk about strategies about how to do that as quickly as possible and as accurately as possible. The good news is I would say that a lot of students struggle in finishing all 4 passages, and it is possible to read only 3 of the passages. And if you're reading 3, that gives you about 11 minutes per passage, and do some educated guessing on that 4th passage and still score in the mid to high 20s. The types of questions that you're going to see, main ideas, key ideas, and details. You're going to see some about the structure of the passage, and then integration of knowledge and ideas is going to be kind of reading between the lines. The last multiple choice section is science. On science, you have overall the same as reading with 40 questions in 35 minutes. But here the passages are broken out a little bit differently. You have 6 to 7 passages. 2 to 3 of them are what what ACT calls, I should say, data representation. So let me show you an example of a data representation passage. So data representation looks like this, where you have very little text and mostly graphs and tables. And those passages are going to have 5 to 6 questions each. You're going to have 3 research summary passages. And this is what a research summary looks like, where now you have more text. It'll say study 1, study 2, study 3, or it might say experiment 1, experiment 2. And these passages will have 6 to 7 questions each. And then last, you have the conflicting viewpoints passage. You only have one of those. And I would say this is most students' least favorite passage because it has the most reading. So it'll give you a topic, and then it'll present different viewpoints on it. And this always has 7 questions. Time-wise, you want to spend about 5 to 6 minutes per passage in order to complete all 6 to 7 passages. And I break the type of questions on the science section into 3 areas. So you're going to have 26 looking questions. And what I mean by a looking question is it's literally looking off the graphs and tables. You're going to have 11 to 13 questions that I call thinking questions. And on those, you have to think more like a scientist. They might ask about dependent or independent variables. They might ask about the setups of the experiments, what methods they used. And then you're going to have only 1 to 3 questions on the entire science test that you actually need science knowledge. So I already mentioned the essay, and the essay is optional. I would say that it is an extra fee to pay to have the essay. And of the colleges and universities in the country, I would say very few require it. The majority recommend it, and then there's still quite a few that don't care. So it's best if you know which schools you're applying to and look it up to see if they require it. Unfortunately, if you're not sure, you're probably better off taking it just to be on the safe side. You get 1 prompt. You have 40 minutes to do your writing, and it is a persuasive essay. And I could show you what it looks like. So you have a topic. You're going to be given 3 perspectives, and then you have to evaluate and analyze the perspectives that are given and make your perspective obvious. Okay, so now that we've talked about what is on the test, let's talk about how the scoring works. So here's each of these scale tables is different for each test. And in order to figure out how you score, you're going to count how many you get correct in a section. So say on English, I get 50 questions right. When I come across here, I would look at the scale score. And you would do the same thing for math, reading, and science. So a perfect score is 36. And we talked about getting about half of the questions wrong is a 20. And that was the national average. And in order to figure out what your composite score is, you literally take the scaled scores that you get for each of the 4 sections, add them together, and divide by 4. The good news is they do round up. So if your goal is 26 and you get a 25.5 when you take the average, the good news is you have that 26. So number 4, I have down here, notice the ranges. So this is so important because this is how you could see how quickly your score can start to increase. So if you notice in English and math, I have these ranges. So basically getting 2 or 3 more questions right is going to raise my score 1 or 2 points. And in reading and science, it's almost a 1-for-1. 1 or 2 more questions correct is going to raise my score 1 or 2 points. Why it's so important to notice that is because this is how your score could start to skyrocket. So say semicolons didn't make sense and all of a sudden you go through and you do some practice and semicolons make sense and there's 3 or 4 questions on the test. Just knowing one thing about semicolons can raise your score 2 points in English. It's amazing to see how fast those changes can be made. All right, the way the essay is scored, and again, the essay is optional. The way the essay is scored is you have 2 readers. Each reader has 4 sections that they score in: ideas and analysis, development and support, organization, and language use. And a reader can give you a score between 1 and 6 in any of these sections. So basically, a perfect score from one reader is going to be a 24, 4 sections with scores up to 6. They add those 2 reader scores together. So it would be out of 48. And then there's a table, just like there was for the English, math, reading, and science, where I had 75 English questions. It scaled it back to be out of 36. There's a similar table for the essay where they take a 48 and they scale it back to being out of 12. So essay score is going to be between 2 and 12. And I would say scoring an 8 is a good score there. All right, now really quickly, we're going to look at what ACT scores mean. So when I already mentioned scoring a 20 is about scoring better than half of the country, and it starts to go up pretty quickly. So a 21 or 22 is already better than 60%. 23 to 24 is 70%. 25 to 27 is scoring better than 80% of the country, and this is usually the level that scholarships start at. So I have a lot of students who their goals in here for a 25 to 27. 28 to 29 is better than 90% of the country. So I know a lot of people have a goal of 30, and it's the elusive 30, right? But if you're not scoring a 30 and you're right at a 28 or 29, don't be discouraged because you're still scoring better than 90% of the country. And then 33 to 36 is all kind of grouped together because anywhere up there, you're scoring, there's only 1% of the country that's scoring higher. All right. So now time for your assignment. So on the worksheet that you printed out, I want you to answer a couple of questions. Give some thought to what section of the ACT are you most confident in? What section are you least confident in? And if timing is an issue for you on tests at school, because knowing what your best and worst are, if you concentrate on those, you can move the average the fastest. And if you do run out of time at school, there's a good chance that you're going to run out of time on the ACT, and it's something to keep in the back of your mind as you're preparing. The other thing that I really want you to come up with out of today is, what is your goal score? So if you already know it, awesome. Go ahead and write it down. So sometimes you already have a school that you want to go to, or you have a sibling maybe that you want to beat. You already know what you want your score to be. If you have no idea, what I would do is if you have never done anything with the ACT before, I would take your PSAT score and convert it to an ACT score, like I mentioned yesterday at that Convert Your Score website. And then I would add 2 to 3 points and set that as your goal score. So good luck with the assignment today. If you have any questions or need any help or feedback, please post in the Facebook group, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.